Hi, welcome to an OSLO tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to cover spreadsheet hierarchy or understanding subsidiary spreadsheets. In order to fully appreciate and understand this video, please be familiar with and or watch the video that we produced on the accept pending entry green check mark and the cancel pending entry red X mark video, because the behavior I'm going to show right now is very linked to the behavior of those buttons. So OSLO has as a core feature a number of different spreadsheets. These spreadsheets in many cases can be called up on their own, or sometimes they're called from other spreadsheets. So if I open the surface data spreadsheet here, the example lens that I'm using really is not crucial to see this behavior. So if I open the surface data spreadsheet, I can make changes and do my normal sorts of things I do in here. One thing that this spreadsheet can do, though, is call up other spreadsheets. So if I call up the wavelength spreadsheet, for example, and I want to change this number, I can hit the green check mark. Well, now I've stored the changes. Well, not quite. I've stored them at this level, but if I go here to X out of the spreadsheet that was used to call that wavelength spreadsheet editor, and I undo the changes, if I come back in here and go into the wavelengths, you'll see it's not 0.5461, 546.1 nanometers. It is back to what it originally was. So if I'm going to make this particular change, then I need to be sure that I use the green check mark for both of the spreadsheets instead of one. Another way that I can actually go about avoiding this behavior is I can come to the help, and here I've got wavelengths that I've already chosen to search for. If I come here, you can see that that wavelength button that I use for the surface data spreadsheet is not the only way for me to call up that specific spreadsheet. There's also a command called WSE that I can use. So if I do wavelength spreadsheet editor, WSE, and I open that, now you can see it's open, but it's the only spreadsheet I have open. So if I choose to make changes just to the wavelengths and I do it this way, it's very clear the changes have now been accepted because I'm back to what I originally was, which was the 587.56 D line for the specific lens. So that's one way to avoid running into a problem. Now, if you do make a change here, so here I put 546 in and I accept it. Let's say I do some more work and I decide I don't want that. Well, I'm not going to be able to store it, so that's a problem. If I open this lens or this spreadsheet and I start doing some things, and then I open that wavelength spreadsheet but decide that the changes I've already made I don't want to accept in the surface data spreadsheet, then I have an issue. The point is that if you're going to make changes to a subsidiary spreadsheet like the wavelength and you're doing it from here, make sure that you're willing to accept the other changes that you've made. So in general, it always makes sense in OSLO to get to a storage state where you're happy. So in this case, it would be get back up to here. I'm happy, I've got things stored. Maybe now I save the lens, and you do your normal file saving that you do in any program in that case. So make sure that you understand that the green check mark or red X mark applies to all the spreadsheets that are open until you get all the way back to the base level is the name of the game. There are some other things that the program will let you do, but I don't advise doing it. For example, I can open this wavelength spreadsheet editor, and then I can also open the surface data spreadsheet, but if I X out of that, you see the wavelength one is still open. So I don't like to do that. I tend to like to run very cleanly, where I'm either running one spreadsheet open or closed, or I make it very clear if I'm opening a given spreadsheet like this surface data spreadsheet, which one, if I call a subsidiary, I want to keep it clean. So I want to make my changes from there, and I want to understand where I am in the spreadsheet hierarchy, because otherwise you might run into a case where you're not sure if you want to accept all the changes that you've made with the spreadsheets open or not. So this is a great feature when you use it properly, but it's a little bit of a dual-edged sword because you can get into states of well, do I really want to accept that or not? So always be get accustomed to and used to using these features properly, and then they're really handy. They're wonderful to actually have. There is another case that I'll mention, which is variable spreadsheet editors. So or an example of it is variable spreadsheet editor. I showed the wavelengths, which is relatively straightforward, and there's the two ways to open and close it, but there are some spreadsheets that there's a lot of ways to open and close them. So one of them is the variable sheets. So this is the one that defines, if you're optimizing, what variables are going to be allowed to change and how can they do it. Well, I can simply open that here from the optimize menu, or I can open it with VSE, and this opens it. Either of those opens it in a clean sort of way without any dependence on a master spreadsheet. If I open the surface data spreadsheet here, I can get to the variables by clicking on that variable button, but now I have it as a subsidiary to this master surface data spreadsheet. And the other way that you can get to that is if you actually define a variable and you define it as a special variable. Variable will just make that a variable, but if I define a special variable, it will also open up this spreadsheet and allow you to define more variables. So it's just kind of a quick little shortcut way to get there. All of the behavior that I showed for the wavelength spreadsheet applies to this variable data editor spreadsheet as well. And you can see it says that it's subsidiary now to the surface data spreadsheet. So I like to keep things as clear as possible in using my accept and cancel entries for the storage state of the computer. And I also like to save files on a regular basis, so I'm sure that I can recover work and keep on moving and being productive with the program. Okay, hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks.